want to welcome you back to our study of the book of First Thessalonians. It's such a privilege for me to be able to bring you these teachings every weekday. Today we're going to be in First Thessalonians, the third chapter, and we're going to start with verse number 8. Now, if you haven't had a chance to listen to yesterday's podcast, I would encourage you to go back because verse number 8 really ties in with verse number 7. In verse number 7, Paul is talking about how the church at Thessalonica was comforting him because of their faith. But then in verse number 8, Paul makes a very, very powerful statement. And this is what he says: "For now we really live, if you stand firm in the Lord." Now we really live. Now the word really isn't in the Greek text, but it's tied in with the verse live, and the verse live, the word live is the Greek word zeo, and it means to really experience life or to be alive. What did the faith of the church at Thessalonica do for the Apostle Paul, the one who started the church? Well, we saw in verse number 7 that the faith of the Thessalonian church comforted Paul. And they comforted him in a time of affliction. They comforted him in a time of distress. And now Paul is saying, guys, it's because of your faith that I am now alive, that I really am experiencing life. Let me just say this to you. Those people that lead you in ministry, those people need you as the church to minister to them. And how do you minister to them? By growing in your faith, by being an example of faith to the people that are around you. You see, that's what the Apostle Paul is experiencing. He had heard while he was in Thessalonica, while he was in Corinth, he had heard that the church was doing well. And then Timothy and Silas show up, and all of a sudden, all of that news that he's been hearing, it's being confirmed through his traveling partners. And Paul is comforted, but now Paul is living, and he's not just living in existence, but he says, you know what? Because of you guys, because of your faith, because you are showing the world your faith, I am alive. But he doesn't end there, does he? No, he goes on. And he says this in the last phrase of verse number 8, if you stand firm in the Lord. If you stand firm in the Lord. What's he doing? He's conditioning it. He's conditioning what he just said. He's telling the Thessalonians that I am alive because of your faith, but you need to continue to stand firm in the Lord. Now, this word stand firm, it actually means to be set. Many, many years ago, I had a job and I worked with a masonry company, and we would lay block. And we knew that when we laid those blocks, we could wiggle them and move them, then get them plumb and things like that for just a short amount of time. Because what would happen is that concrete and that mortar that we used to lay those blocks would begin to set that block or that stone in its place. And buddy, once it was set, there was no moving it unless you destroyed the block and destroyed the bond between the blocks. Well, the Apostle Paul is using that same terminology here. He's saying, guys, you need to be set in the Lord. In other words, you need to make sure that you're standing with him, that you're standing with the Lord in whatever happens to you. Now, in the church at Thessalonica, or in the city of Thessalonica, there was a tremendous persecution going on of the believers. And so Paul is writing to them and he's saying, guys, if you want me to continue to live, if you want to continue to comfort me, then make sure that you do this. Stay set. Stand firm in your relationship with the Lord. What a wonderful, wonderful statement that the Apostle Paul makes. And let me just say this to all of you churchgoers. If you want to bless your leadership, then make sure that you're continuing in your faith, but also make sure that you are set in the Lord, that you're not movable from your faith and from your relationship with the Lord. Now let's quickly go on to verse number 9, and we won't finish verse number 9, but this is what the Apostle Paul says. For what thanks can we render to God for you in return for all the joy with which we rejoice before our God on your account? Actually, that's the whole verse, but what's Paul saying? Paul's saying, what joy. What joy you've brought to us. So there's three things. There's comfort. There's this being alive. And now the Apostle Paul says the third thing, this joy. So he says, what thanks we have rendered to God. In other words, we are so thankful to God for what you've done. We are so thankful to God for the joy that you are causing us. Now, let's just understand this, that Paul is thankful to God. Paul knows the source. Paul knows the reason why they are producing joy. And the reason is God. God has brought a wonderful move of the Holy Spirit into the church at Thessalonica. But yet as they move in God, the Apostle Paul says, we are so thankful to God for you in return for all the joy which we rejoice before our God on your account. What's Paul saying? We have joy. We rejoice. Why is he rejoicing? Because he's a Christian? No, he does that, I'm sure. But why is he rejoicing? He's rejoicing because of the church at Thessalonica. So I say to you again, make sure that the leadership of your church is filled with joy and that they're rejoicing because of your relationship with God. Thank you for watching. Join us again tomorrow.